Welcome back in. Forward Pass continuing live. I am Justin Bino. Coming up, going to take you around the league. Scores, stats, injuries, and stories. Going to talk a little bit about the Raiders. Going to talk about the first NFL touchdown for one Timothy Richard Tebow. We're going to talk about concussions, pending sanctions coming down from the NFL, stiffer penalties. And we are going to talk Monday Night Football, Jacksonville and Tennessee. But first, I want to get to the Miami-Green Bay game. Now, everybody knows, everybody who's ever met me knows that I'm probably one of the biggest Miami homers there is. Maybe ever. But I am not arrogant enough to think that Miami won that game outright. They didn't. It all came down to a play at the end of the fourth quarter. Miami was leading 20-13. Just a few ticks left on the clock. And Aaron Rodgers runs one into the end zone to tie the game and send it to overtime. Then the Dolphins win the coin toss in overtime. Can't do anything on their first possession. Green Bay gets the ball. They force a 3-and-out. And then one of the worst punts I've ever seen happened. Horrible punt from Green Bay. Sets Miami up on their own 49, basically right in the middle of the field. And I think Jim Mandich, who was calling the game for Miami yesterday, said it best. The Green Bay Packers have taken this ball game and said, here, you can have it. The Dolphins have been handed this game on a silver platter. And they were. They moved the ball, ended it with a 44-yard field goal from Dan Carpenter to win it 23-20 in overtime. Chad Henne, 23 of 39, not a very good pass completion. 231 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Brandon Marshall, 10 receptions for 127 yards, but no touchdown. But the Henne to Marshall connection is getting strong, isn't it? I'm liking what I'm seeing. I haven't seen this much of a vertical passing game from Miami in years. But what is going on with our running game? Ricky and Ronnie just can't seem to get it going. We were a top 5 rushing team last year, and I think maybe it does kind of fall on the offensive line a little bit. We've had a lot of personnel changes up front. But before we go any further, it is time to hear from Miami Dolphins head coach Tony Sparano.
I would imagine that we should feel great walking off that field. It's a hard place to come in and win. This team showed great character today, great resolve. It's been a heck of a 2 weeks. 53 players in that locker room. Every coach in that locker room believed that we can get this done. And they came in here and got this done. So it didn't matter how long it took. That's a good football team out there. So we knew that this was going to be a long game. We knew that we were going to be in a close game. And we just felt like at the end of this thing that we could find a way to win this game, and we did. It was our plan to run the ball the entire game, and we did. We're able to run the ball, I thought, pretty effectively today. We had a couple penalties that called back a couple runs that I thought were pretty big plays, but nonetheless ran the ball well. Thought the guys up front played a really good game. They were physical in the run game. They protected the quarterback well, and I thought that kind of helped us today to be a little bit more balanced. Like I told you, I'm not sure where we were, but I'm sure we were either pretty close to balanced or we were ahead of the chains from a run standpoint. Yeah, 3 field goals. I thought our kickoff return team did a nice job today. You know, Nolan did a good job of hitting it today, and I thought those guys worked hard for him up front. I thought the coverage unit played pretty well. You know, they got a nick on a punt out there, you know, in one situation. So obviously still a work in progress, but nonetheless, that team has been, you know, they've been put through the ringer the last 2 weeks. So I was happy to see those guys rise up. We had some big hits. Timmy Dobbins made a big hit out there, so I was pleased. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think you have to be willing to come into these kind of environments and play these kind of games. And not everybody's willing to do that. Some people aren't patient enough to do it. They're just not willing to bring their team in and say, hey, we're going to go 15 rounds. And I knew that this was going to be this kind of situation today, and in that it was going to be a close football game for us. We wanted to make it that kind of game down here in this situation. I just felt like our team was going to be able to pull it out, and to our credit, we did. We were able to do that. That's a really good football team, a well-coached football team out there, and they're going to be there at the end.
All right, thoughts from head coach Tony Sparano. I want to talk about the defense. Boy, what a defensive showing we had yesterday. Channing Crowder finally back in the lineup for the first time since the first preseason game. Been battling a groin injury for most of the season. Glad to see Channing back out there. Channing's one of my favorites. He's the best. Couple of picks by Jason Allen. And how about Jason Allen? First round pick in 2006 by then head coach Nick Saban, taken 16th overall. And honestly, up until this year, he has done nothing. Nothing. And now all of a sudden he's looking like he's a Pro Bowl caliber player. That's what he's looking like out there. But speaking of Pro Bowl caliber players, how about the young man from Canada, Cameron Wake? This guy came out of nowhere, didn't get drafted in the NFL, wound up playing in Canada for a little while, two-time Defensive Player of the Year in the Canadian Football League. The Dolphins bring him down. Didn't really get to play a whole lot last year, but then again, he was behind the likes of Jason Taylor and Joey Porter. So, yeah, no kidding he didn't get to play a whole lot last year. This year, pretty much a full-time starter. He's been having himself a very good year. Had a hell of an outing yesterday, and once again, I think I'm going to leave that analysis to Neon Deion Sanders. Prime time, baby.
Cameron Wake, all the way down from Miami. This guy sacked Aaron Rodgers 3 times on the day, has 6 sacks on the season. The Dolphins get a huge win at Lambeau Field, which is an easy task. No.
All right, good thoughts from Deion. I thought Miami, there were a lot of highs and lows of yesterday's games. A lot of things we did well, a lot of things we didn't. And again, I say, it all came down to a bad punt by the Green Bay Packers in overtime that basically handed Miami that game. And so, me, along with pretty much every other Dolphins fans, we're wondering, where do we go from here? All right, coming up, our next game at home in Sun Life Stadium, hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I mentioned earlier. Big Ben is back. Now, it was a bit of a bizarre game when the Steelers came down to face the Dolphins in last season's finale. Chad Henne goes out with an eye injury. In comes Pat White, who he drafted to be a Wildcat quarterback, although it turned out he really couldn't throw the ball much better than Ronnie Brown. He's in there for a few plays, leaves with a concussion, and in comes a Kansas City classic. A folk hero here in Kansas City, Tyler Thigpen. Came in, didn't really do all that bad, had a touchdown, had one interception that really wasn't his fault. His guy got tripped. Now, the interception that Thigpen threw at the end of the game, that one was his fault. So this is going to be interesting. Troy Polamalu, healthy. Chad Henne, healthy. Ben Roethlisberger, not suspended. Brandon Marshall, what is he going to do against the Steelers secondary? Now, I'm scared to death of how our running game is going to do, just given the fact that we have not been able to get anything going on the ground this year at all. And the Steelers, one of the best in the league at shutting down the opponent's run game. And they're pretty good at taking away the pass. Not sure how Miami's going to do this week. Coming up after that, we go to Cincinnati. I think that's a toss-up. Then we go to Baltimore. I don't know. I hate to go against Miami, but I think I might have to go with Baltimore. Up next, at home against Tennessee. I think that's winnable for Miami. 4 days after that, going to be on a short week, November 18th, NFL Network. Hosting the Bears. I don't think the Bears are all they're cracked up to be. I don't think their passing game is all it's cracked up to be. I'm chalking that up as a win for Miami. November 28th, at Oakland, win. December 5th, at home against Cleveland, win. December 12th, in New York against the Jets. We got to win that game. I'm not going to say we will win that game, but we have to. Next, December 19th, at home against Buffalo, win. Next week, day after Christmas, at home against Detroit, win. January 2nd, ending the season in New England. That's going to be a hell of a game. That's a game that Miami's got to win. And I think we're going to get our revenge for being embarrassed on Monday night and the huge special teams meltdown. And speaking of bad special teams plays, there was one play yesterday. Miami's special teams unit, for the most part, did a lot better than they did in that meltdown against New England. But there was one play in the second quarter that really pissed me off. A holding call on Leiden Murtha, which negated a Dan Carpenter 43-yard field goal to tie the game. And instead, we had to take the field goal from 53 yards. Now, thankfully, we still made it. Otherwise, we would be killing Leiden Murtha in Miami right now. So Dolphin special teams getting better. Still needs to be cleaned up, though. All right, I'm going to take a quick timeout. Coming up in my final segment, scores, stats, injuries, and storylines from around the league. We're going to talk some Oakland Raiders. We're going to talk some Tim Tebow. We're going to talk about the concussion issues and the pending sanctions. And we will preview Monday night, Tennessee and Jacksonville. Stay tuned.